Good evening, everybody. My name is Gabe Kinney. I'm the campus executive chef here at St. Mary's College. Tonight I'm going to be making you a dish. It's one of my favorites, seared diver scallops over saffron risotto, with a little cracked basil and a little whole butter to finish it off. I hope you enjoy it. The ingredients we'll be using tonight are some of my favorites. I have Pacific diver scallops, Spanish saffron, and arborio rice that, when cooked properly, becomes creamy in texture. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cook the risotto, because that always takes the longest. I don't recommend starting to cook it for a group of 20 if they're coming over to your house. But since we're during COVID, we can only have 4. First thing you're going to want to do is get your pan hot. All right? So you turn it on. And once that's going, I like to heat up a little olive oil. You can tell that's working. You can hear it sizzle. And then once that comes up, I like to add a little garlic. Emerald would say 10,000 cloves, but I'm not going to do that much. Give that a little toss. Let that start heating. You can tell it's getting close because it starts permeating the air. After that, I'm going to add a little bit of onion. You want to be careful not to let your garlic brown. One good way of stopping that, reduce your heat. The onions are almost translucent. What I like to do now is add in my saffron and let the flavors of the saffron start becoming aromatic and seasoning the onions and garlic. Add a little more oil. Brown garlic can go from brown to burnt very quickly, and it gives off a very, very bad flavor. At this point, I'm going to add a little white wine. And start to let that deglaze. Once that does, I'm going to add some lemon zest. You can see how the color of the onions and garlic are becoming nice and bright yellow. When I'm cooking risotto, I always like to have my chicken stock or broth or whatever I'm using nice and warm. Now I'm going to take my risotto, my arborio rice, and I'm going to add it into it. And then I'm going to start cooking. Now I like to toast my rice a little bit just to add some nuttiness to the flavors. And then I'm going to start adding chicken broth. Now one thing that I said in the beginning was Risotto releases its starch and becomes creamier in texture the longer it cooks. So at this point I'm going to reduce my heat a little bit and let that rice start to absorb that liquid. Season at every step, right? So right now I'm going to add a little salt and a little pepper. I like to use kosher salt. I think it's got a nice soft taste. Okay. You can see how that liquid is almost absorbed. I'm going to add a little bit more. Now, cooking risotto for 1 or 2 people is a little different than cooking it for 500. It tends to cook a little bit faster, but it does absorb a lot of liquid, usually about 6 times its volume. Not quite done. So I started with about a cup of rice, and I'll probably end up with about 6 cups, maybe a little less. I like to add some fresh herbs at the end. So this is just about done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my heat down really low, let it finish, and as most of that liquid is being absorbed into the rice, I'm going to add a little chopped parsley and a little fresh basil, and I'm going to add some chives. I'm going to save some of the chives for some garnish afterwards, and then a little lemon juice. Not a lot, just a little bit. Maybe about 3 tablespoons worth. We'll let that rest. It'll continue to cook. The herbs and the lemon juice give it a nice fresh flavor. Since it's typically very savory and very rich. So here I have some shaved Spanish Manchego, aged Spanish Manchego, which is a cow's milk. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some of this in here just to help finish that, tighten it up, add a nice rich flavor to it, a little bit more. And then lastly, I'm going to throw in a little butter. So now we're going to cook our scallops. Scallops do not take long to cook. If you've ever eaten an overcooked scallop, you will never forget it because it'll taste like a gumdrop. When you're cooking them, one thing, timing is everything with cooking. I like to get my pan moderately hot, usually about 250, 300 degrees, before I add the oil. One thing to notice about scallops, sea scallops, is they have this little muscle on the side called an abductor muscle. This is the part that keeps it, helps them close the shell. If you cook it, it's very tough and it's very easy to remove. You can see it sticks out on the side. The best thing to do is just peel it off, just like that. That is also one way to tell that you have really true diver scallops, diver sea scallops, is by looking for that. Sometimes they may try and substitute something for that. All right, my pan is hot. I'm going to add some oil. All right, and as that's heating, I'm going to go ahead and season my scallops. Now I like to season them ahead of time, so I'm going to take some black pepper and a little kosher salt, right? About that much. And my oil is getting nice and toasty right there. So once these are seared, I'm going to go ahead and add some shallots, and then I'm going to add some whole butter. One thing I've learned about food is that food will tell you when it is ready to be turned. The reason I say that is because a lot of times people try to caramelize their protein and it sticks. That could be one of two things. There's moisture in the pan or it's not ready. And then go ahead and season the other side. Okay. Now once I turn these over, it's going to be a very fast pickup. Once I turn them over, I'm going to add some shallots, a little white wine, and then I'm going to shut the heat off and finish it with some whole butter. Okay. See how easy that was to turn over? And you see how they're nice and caramelized on one side. But they're not overdone. Okay. So here's where I add the shallots. Not a lot, mind you. Some people don't like a lot of onion flavor. Little white wine, and then I shut it off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the butter finish in the pan. I'm going to take some of that butter and white wine and shallots, and I'm going to just drizzle it over the scallops and let that baste in there for a second. Now we're ready to plate. We've got our finished risotto. Our scallops are nice and tender, they're not overcooked, and they're nice and caramelized and seasoned. What we're going to do is we're going to take some of the risotto, not much. We're going to place some in the base of the bowl. Then once that's done, we'll take some scallops. Right? We'll place those right on there. And then we'll take some of that sauce, that wonderful sauce, and just drizzle it over. And then remember those chives I said? Here you go. We're gonna garnish just a little bit. I hope you enjoy.